Rain hammered against the Raging Boar's hull with persistence, each impact adding to the symphony of war that had become my life's soundtrack. The 19th Kethara Mechanized Infantry pushed deeper into this green hell, and I knew, with a certainty, that we were driving straight into the maw of the Great Devourer. I could hear Westner running his diagnostics on the multi-laser, the power couplings hum indicating optimal charge efficiency. Good. We'd need every shot to count when the killing started. My eyes moved across the tactical displays as they filled with intelligence reports that grew more dire by the hour. 3 worlds already consumed in this system. Kethara Prime would be the 4th unless we could stop them here. Our Chimera represented everything right about standard template construct design. 38 tons of ceramite and plasteel that had remained unchanged for millennia because it worked. I'd commanded 6 different vehicles over my career, each one eventually destroyed in combat, but they all shared the same bones, the same machine spirit. Reeves kept us at precisely 18 kilometers per hour, his hands dancing across controls worn smooth by countless drivers before him. How many of them were dead now? All of them, probably. That was the fate of armored cavalry in the 41st millennium. The interior atmosphere was thick enough to cut. Gun oil, promethium fumes, recycled air, and the particular stench of fierce sweat mixed with combat stims. 8 soldiers occupied the passenger compartment, each one a specialist I'd handpicked from the remnants of shattered units. We'd been fighting for 93 days straight, long enough for the initial terror to burn away, leaving only bone-deep exhaustion and professional competence. I watched Haynes checking his bolt pistol through the command compartment's viewport. The weapon was an heirloom, an Ultima pattern that had served 6 generations. Each modification told a story: improved sights from Mordian, a custom grip carved on Cypress 7. Now it would add Tyranids to its tally. The thought should have been comforting. It wasn't. Cooper sat wedged between Sullivan and Parkin, the boy trying to control his breathing. Fresh from the Schola Progenium, still believing in glory and duty. He'd learn if he lived long enough. They all learned eventually that courage was just another resource to be managed, spent carefully, because once it was gone, you became a liability to your unit. Bennett, the augmented communications specialist, processed data streams that would have burned out an unmodified human brain. His augmentations made him invaluable and made me uncomfortable. There was something unnatural about the way his eyes twitched when processing multiple Vox channels. Second company engaging heavy resistance, Bennett reported. Grid reference Kappa 77, estimating 300+ bioforms, gaunt subspecies predominantly, with warrior strain synapse creatures providing coordination. I processed this with the efficiency of long practice. Second company falling back, conducting a fighting retreat that had already cost them 2 chimeras and 40% casualties. The swarm was adapting faster than doctrine said it should. Each engagement taught them more about our tactics, our weapons, our weaknesses. We were training our own executioners. Bronner was caressing his autocannon like a lover. The man had turned his weapon into a shrine to death, kill markings covering most of the receiver housing. 643 termagants, 212 hormagaunts, 47 warriors, and 1 carnifex. The precision of his count told me more about his mental state than any psych evaluation. When soldiers started keeping exact tallies, they were either going to break or had already broken in ways that made them more effective killers. Parkin cleaned his non-regulation shotgun with obsessive focus. I hadn't questioned him when he'd reported with it. In jungle warfare, regulatory compliance came second to effectiveness. Mitchell hummed while checking demolition charges, the sound barely audible over our engine noise. The former hive ganger brought skills that weren't taught in any guard manual, an artist's appreciation for destruction that had proved invaluable. Sullivan hadn't spoken in 3 days, not since watching his squad dissolve in bioacid at Outpost Theta. The 1,000-yard stare, the mechanical movements, I'd seen it before. He was still combat effective, maybe even more so now that human concerns had been burned out of him. That made him useful. It also made him dangerous. Walsh prepared his medical supplies with grim fatalism. 4 units of synthetic blood, a dozen stim injectors, enough antivenom to maybe save 3 men. I knew he'd already run the triage calculations. I got priority as commander, Wessner next for the multi-laser, Bronner after that. Cold mathematics that reduced men to their combat utility. I'd made the same calculations myself. The jungle's sudden silence snapped me to full alertness. Not normal quiet, absolute silence. Every living thing had either fled or been consumed. In 3 tours fighting Tyranids, I'd learned to trust that silence more than any augur reading. Movement, thermal imaging, left sector, Wessner reported, his voice steady. Too steady. Combat drugs or trained calm, it didn't matter as long as he could shoot. The signatures were wrong for local fauna. My tactical display, attempted classification, running through threat databases containing nightmares from 100 worlds. The probability matrices made my blood chill. Gene stealers, 20 plus. The vanguard organisms, apex predators that could cover ground at 65 kilometers per hour through terrain that would stop a sentinel. 6 limbs, claws that could peel power armor, and worst of all, intelligence. Real tactical thinking, not just hunger. I keyed the Vox, broadcasting on all channels. All units, this is the Raging Boar. Gene Stealer Pack, strength 20 plus, bearing 270. Grid reference Theta 49. Engaging. The multi-laser spoke first, coherent light turning alien flesh to superheated vapor. The lead Gene Stealer's death only cleared firing lines for its packmates. They came through the undergrowth like living missiles, bodies low, claws extended. Each one represented directed evolution, the hive mind's solution to killing armored humans efficiently. Dismount, defensive formation Gamma 3, repel borders. Haynes had the rear hatch open before we'd stopped. Good man. Initiative like that was why I'd picked him as squad leader. The squad deployed, each soldier covering their assigned arc. I watched through the viewports as they engaged, Lars Fire creating a light show that seemed pitiful against evolutionary perfection. Cooper faced down a Gene Stealer with surprising calm, placing shots with careful precision. Joint shots to disable, then the killing blow to the skull. The boy might survive after all. Sullivan had switched to full auto, his lasgun screaming heat warnings he ignored. When a Gene Stealer tried to flank, Parkin met it with his shotgun at point-blank range. The solid slug removed most of its skull in a spray that painted our hull. Bronner's autocannon filled the air with thunder, high-explosive shells throwing alien parts in multiple directions. A Gene Stealer burst from the canopy above. The angles were wrong. It would reach Wessner before anyone could react. But Parkin's reflexes saved him, fléchette rounds turning the creature to confetti. Walsh went down under the corpse, Mitchell helping drag him free. Both men gagged at the acidic stench. Good. Disgust meant they were still human. 37 seconds of combat, 18 dead Gene Stealers, no Imperial casualties. Pure luck, Gene Stealers usually claimed blood for blood. This had been a probe, testing our defenses. Somewhere the hive mind was processing data, learning, adapting. Burn them. Haynes ordered without prompting. Mitchell doused them with promethium while Cooper watched our flanks. We pushed deeper into the Morvac Valley. My tactical display filled with contact reports as other units faced similar probes. Pattern analysis showed the Tyranids testing our lines at regular intervals, identifying weak points for the main assault. Each skirmish taught them more about our weapons, tactics, response times. Bennett isolated priority traffic. Colonel Vance's voice came through heavy with static and explosions. All units be advised. Seismic sensors detecting massive subterranean movement. Estimate Bio-Titan-class organisms moving toward primary defensive lines. All units prepare for sustained engagement. Bio-Titans. My hands tightened on the display controls. I'd faced one before on Karduniash. Lost 2 complete companies bringing it down. The things were mobile fortresses, weapon platforms that shrugged off battle cannon rounds like rain. And seismic suggested they were moving underground, avoiding our orbital surveillance. The terrain shifted to swampland, our speed dropping as mud grabbed at the tracks. Engine temperature climbing steadily. Reeves was fighting the planet itself now. Every meter of advance became a struggle between machine strength and natural resistance. We found 4th Platoon's remains at what had been a forward observation post. The position had been overrun so quickly, their Lars cannon hadn't even powered up. Haynes called out, "Mitchell, rig the whole position. Denial protocols, good call." I watched Mitchell work, placing charges with an artist's precision. The explosion would deny biological material while serving as cremation for men who deserved better. He whistled while he worked, a hymnal I didn't recognize. The sound was incongruous here, but somehow fitting. Bennett went pale as he processed flash traffic. "Sir, you need to hear this." Colonel Vance at Outpost Meridian. The sounds that came through weren't words at first. Rending metal, bioplasma discharge, that chittering of million insects that haunted my dreams. Then Vance's voice, professional even as his world ended. "Meridian has fallen. 3 biotitans, classification Hierophant, estimated 90,000 lesser organisms. They're not stopping to feed. They are bypassing biomass recovery. Whatever's driving them wants speed over efficiency. All units fall back to secondary positions. Meridian is static. 3,000 guardsmen gone. The Tyranids had traded biomass recovery for strategic speed. They were learning, adapting their strategy. Meridian had been our primary supply depot and communications hub. Without it, we were cut off. I made the only decision that made sense. New orders. We're abandoning assigned routes. Cut through the desolation, link up with any units we find, make for Hive City Secundus. Command structure is compromised, so we're on local initiative. The desolation's trees grew so thick that sunlight became memory. Reeves drove by instinct and auspex, trusting our machine spirit to guide us through terrain marked impassable on every map. Our hull scraped between trunks, leaving paint like trail markers. The auger screamed warnings before the first bioplasma hit. Living ammunition splashed across our front armor, beginning its molecular breakdown of ceramite. Westner traversed the turret, searching for targets, but the canopy was too thick. More impacts followed, each one degrading our armor incrementally. Tyranid warriors, Bronner identified calmly. Elevated positions, defilade coverage. They've got us in a kill box. Standard doctrine said advance through the ambush, use speed to break their timing. But we couldn't see them. The warriors had chosen perfectly, overlapping fields of fire while remaining hidden. Only one option. "Dismount," Haynes ordered, already understanding. "We clear them on foot." I monitored the tactical situation while my squad deployed into green hell. Lars Fire probed the canopy, searching for bioweapon flash. Through the viewports, I watched Cooper advance through undergrowth that grabbed at his equipment. A warrior revealed itself 40 meters up. Cooper put 3 shots into its thorax before it could fire, the Lars bolts cooking internal organs. Sullivan charged a warrior's position with surprising speed. He stuck a demolition charge to the tree and rolled clear. The explosion brought the whole tree down, the warrior hitting hard enough to stun it. Bronner finished it with autocannon fire that removed its head and upper torso. More warriors revealed themselves, turning ambush into running firefight. Mitchell used grenades with devastating effect. Walsh stayed central, ready for casualties that never came. We were winning through aggression and firepower, turning their ambush into slaughter. The last warrior died to concentrated Lars fire from 3 directions. Without their synaptic coordination, lesser organisms in the area would revert to instinct. But the time cost. Every minute fighting was a minute the main swarm gained. We remounted and pushed on. The desolation grew thicker until even our powerful engines strained. Vines like ship cables had to be cut with the dozer blade, each one bleeding sap that smelled too much like blood. Even the plants had adapted to Tyranid presence, becoming something between flora and fauna. We went alone in fleeing through the desolation. I counted a dozen units on my display, all abandoning doctrine for survival. We passed a basilisk mired to its turret ring, crew working frantically with entrenching tools. No stopping, every unit on its own now. 10 minutes later, we heard its Earthshaker cannon firing repeatedly, then silence. Westner tracked movement in the canopy, lictors. Assassination organisms moving with impossible grace, chameleonic skin making them nearly invisible. They ignored us, having specific targets programmed into their neural matrices. One dropped onto a passing sentinel, flesh hooks punching through the canopy to extract the pilot. The walker stumbled on briefly before collapsing, machine spirit, unable to function without human guidance. We broke free into former agricultural land, now converted to digestion pools. Kilometers of bioacid reducing plant matter to nutrient soup. Ripper swarms moved through the pools like living filters, each one barely intelligent, but in millions they stripped worlds bare. This was how worlds died, not in battle, but in methodical conversion of biomass to alien flesh. A damaged Lehman Russ sat hull down at a crossroads. Its commander waved us down, face masked in exhaustion and stim abuse. Half his crew dead, cooked when bioplasma breached their hull. "Thank the Emperor," he voxed, voice cracking. "We've been holding this position for 6 hours, lost our squadron in the breakthrough. What's your status?" 8 rounds remaining, minimal fuel. Running on fumes and prayer. We can make Secondus if we convoy up. Safety in numbers, right? I weighed the options. His firepower would help, but his speed would slow us. Mobility was life when outnumbered thousands to one. Before I could respond, the decision was made for us. Gargoyles descended like a plague, hundreds of them, wings beating in harmony. Not scattered packs, but a coordinated strike force guided by synapse creatures. The sky darkened with their numbers. Westner cycled to rapid fire, coherent light burning through wings and bodies. The Lehman Russ's battle cannons spoke, high explosive shells detonating in gargoyle clusters. But there were too many. They landed on both vehicles. Bronner swept them off our hull with autocannon fire, accepting armor damage as the price. The impacts left craters, future weak points. The Lehman Russ wasn't as fortunate. Within seconds they were inside, and the crew's screams echoed through Vox before cutting off. The tank died, swarmed over like a corpse. Reeves gunned us through the aerial swarm. Gargoyles bounced off our hull or were crushed under tracks. Bioplasma splashed across armor plates, eating through ceramite layers. Westner burned out his primary focusing crystal, maintaining continuous fire, the multi-lasers spirit screaming warnings. I watched Cooper firing through his vision port, each shot carefully placed. We were down to 60% on Lars cells. The mathematics of attrition were simple. We were finite. They were not. We left the crossroads behind, another defeat on the map. How many tanks, how many crews? The Imperium could replace machines and train new crews, but not as fast as Tyranids grew new organisms. Every engagement tilted the balance toward extinction. "Check weapons and ammunition," Haynes ordered during the respite. Good. Maintaining routines maintained sanity. 60% Lars cells, 40% solid projectiles. Autocannon had 400 rounds, 5 minutes of sustained combat. Mitchell had 6 charges plus his flamer. Not enough for serious engagement, but maybe enough to reach Secondus. As we crested the ridge overlooking Palian Valley, thousands fleeing outer settlements, panic spreading faster than PDF discipline could contain. These people had seen what happened when Tyranids caught fleeing populations. A PDF lieutenant flagged us down, blood and worse staining his uniform. Hadn't slept in days, stims keeping him upright but unable to hide the shakes. His platoon reduced to a single squad. Mechanized unit. Thank the Emperor, we need escort through the Palian Gorge. Lost our armor support yesterday when the Bio-Titans came through. I checked my tactical display. The Palian Gorge, natural choke point, perfect for ambush. Single-file traffic, no room to maneuver, but also the fastest route to Secondus. Go around and add 3 days the civilians didn't have. We're one vehicle, I pointed out. Can't protect a column this size. You can protect some of them, desperation creeping into his voice. We'll put the children in the vehicles closest to you. Give them a chance at least, please. The moral calculus of war. Save few by abandoning many, or die trying to save all and achieve nothing. I'd made worse choices, ordered men to their deaths for meters of ground. But those were soldiers who understood. These were civilians whose only crime was living on a world the Tyranids wanted. I gave the order to integrate with the convoy. positioning us near a cargo hauler packed with young faces. 43 children pressed against plexiglass windows. Children who still saw a chimera as protection rather than target. The calculation was simple. When the attack came, and it would come, most would die. But some might live because we were there. We entered the Palian Gorge as storm clouds gathered. The narrow passage compressed the convoy to single-file walking pace. Cliff walls rose 200 meters on either side, perfect for ambush. My tactical display showed it clearly. We were entering a killing ground with no support and one understrength unit as protection. The attack came from below. Tyranids had learned humans always looked up or out, rarely down. Ravners burst from the ground like nightmare serpents, 4 meters of muscle and chitin that could process stone into nutrients. Their emergence shattered the road, vehicles tumbling into suddenly opened pits where more Ravners waited. A family transport disappeared into a hole, screaming cut off as bioacid flooded the pit. More Ravners emerged along the convoy's length, thoracic claws bisecting anyone too slow to flee. Bronner hammered rounds into emerging Ravners, their tough hides absorbing multiple hits before critical damage accumulated. One took 17 shells before its neural column severed, body thrashing for minutes in death. Wessner played the multi-laser like a precision instrument, burning through skulls while conserving power. The focusing array showed stress fractures, but he appeased the machine's spirit, adjusting flow to compensate. Mitchell lobbed grenades into emergence holes, buying precious seconds. A Ravner erupted directly beneath us. The impact lifted the Raging Boar onto her left tracks, that sick moment when gravity became negotiable. Reeves slammed the controls right, using momentum to bring us crashing back down. Warning lights flashed, suspension damage, track tension warnings, dozens of minor failures we'd never get repaired. Haynes had the hatch open before we'd stabilized. I monitored the tactical situation while my squad fought. Ravners everywhere, civilians running in panic, PDF firing in all directions. Through my viewport, I saw Cooper position himself between us and the children's transport. A Ravner reared up to smash through their roof when Walsh appeared with one of Mitchell's demo charges. The explosion removed the creature's head and upper body, gore splattering across the transport windows. Children screaming inside. The battle raged for minutes that felt like hours. When the last Ravner fell, we'd lost dozens of vehicles, hundreds of lives. The road was cratered beyond use, forcing survivors to navigate around holes still smoking from explosives and bioacid. We cleared the gorge to find Imperial forces digging in on open ground. Hive City Secundus rose in the distance, spires reaching toward clouds like fingers of steel. PDF and guard units dug in with desperation. This was the last line. If Secundus fell, the planet was lost. No fallback positions, no third line. Stand or die. The Raging Boar pulled into a vehicle park where tech priests worked frantically on damaged machines. We were assessed Priority 3, repaired if resources allowed and time permitted. Looking at the queue, neither seemed likely. Haynes gathered his squad for assessment. Parkin's left arm hung useless, nerve damage from Ravner toxins already showing necrosis. Without proper medical attention, he'd lose it within days. Walsh was down to basic supplies that wouldn't last another engagement. Everyone sported injuries that would have meant evacuation under normal circumstances. But these weren't normal. Walking wounded was the best we could hope for. I found myself studying Cooper as he methodically reloaded, checking each last cell. The boy from the Scholar was gone, replaced by something harder. He'd saved those children in the transport, but I could see him running the same calculations I was. How many others died while he focused on one vehicle? Survival was a harsh teacher. Bennett monitored Vox traffic with increasing agitation. The Tyranid assault wasn't random. They were hitting infrastructure with surgical precision. Power generation, water purification, everything needed to sustain civilian population. They weren't just trying to take the city, they were making it uninhabitable. Brilliant in its simplicity. Why waste bioforms in urban warfare when you could simply make the city untenable? New orders came through. All mechanized units to report to Staging Area Gamma for reorganization into ad hoc battle groups. The strategy had shifted from holding territory to buying time for evacuation. Shuttles lifted from the spaceport in continuous streams, each one packed beyond safety margins. At Staging Area Gamma, I saw the remnants of once proud regiments. Units that had been companies were now squads. Officers tried creating coherent formations from survivors, mixing specialties in combinations that would have horrified any staff college. Tank crews without tanks became infantry. Artillery observers without guns became spotters. The Raging Boar was assigned to Task Force Hammerfall, 3 damaged Lehman Russ variants, 5 chimeras including ours, a hellhound leaking promethium, and 2 sentinels that had seen better days. Our mission was to hold the southern approaches to the spaceport as long as possible. Major Kellam commanded from a Lehman Russ exterminator that had lost most of its senses. Half his face was burn-scarred, flesh twisted into permanent grimace. His briefing was brutally honest. The Tyranids are massing for final push. Orbital reconnaissance shows 3 biotitans moving from the south, supported by approximately 60,000 lesser organisms. When they hit, we'll have minutes at most. Someone asked about artillery support and air cover. Gone. Basilisks dry 2 days ago. The last Valkyries were busy evacuating the governor's family. We had what we had. 11 vehicles and maybe 100 infantry against 60,000 Tyranids and biotitans. We'd last as long as ammunition held out, then die. But every minute held was another shuttle launched, another 1,000 civilians reaching the void. Questions, Kellam asked. There were none. We all understood. This wasn't a battle we could win, only one where we could choose how expensively we sold our lives. The Emperor protects, Kellam finished, the words sounding like a curse. The Emperor protects, we echoed, ash in our mouths. We moved out as the first Biotitan appeared on the horizon. The Hierophant stood 60 meters tall, a cathedral of flesh and weapon symbiotes. Its 6 legs covered ground with deceptive speed, each step spanning 20 meters. Smaller organisms swarmed around its feet like insects attending some blasphemous god. The Lehman Russ tanks opened fire at maximum range, shells barely scratching the Biotitan's hide. Wounds sealed within seconds, hyper-adaptive biology already adjusting carapace density. It responded with biocannons firing living ammunition that exploded in molecular acid. A Lehman Russ demolisher took a direct hit, siege cannon dissolving. The crew cooked inside their metal coffin. We fought a mobile battle using terrain to break sight lines. Couldn't hurt it significantly, but could annoy it, force it to waste time crushing us. Each minute was precious. Then a second Biotitan appeared, then a third. The Tyranids had committed their heaviest to the assault. Reeves pushed us through burning promethium storage tanks, using smoke for concealment. The temperature inside climbed past human tolerance. Men stripped to the waist, sweat making deck plates into skating rinks. The engine temperature gauge had melted, leaving just a blob pointing at catastrophe. We emerged directly in a Biotitan's path. Its foot descended like judgment. Reeves slammed into reverse, tracks screaming. We cleared the impact zone by meters, ground compacting into a crater that could swallow a rhino. The Hellhound made its final run, driver aiming for a Biotitan's leg joint. The damaged vehicle had become a rolling bomb. The pilot's last transmission was pure rage that could have come from an orc. The explosion when it hit actually staggered the Biotitan. Burning promethium splashed up its leg, eating through flesh faster than regeneration could compensate. More units threw themselves at the Biotitans with similar desperation. Chimeras rammed ankles hoping to unbalance them. Men with demo charges made impossible runs, most dying before delivery. I watched shuttles lifting off, drives flaring a blue-white as they clawed for altitude. Gargoyles swarmed after them, but point defense created spheres of death. How many lives did each minute buy? Task Force Hammerfall was down to 3 vehicles. Us, Kellam's command tank, and a Chimera that had lost its main weapon. We fell back toward the spaceport's final defensive line. Heavy weapon teams dug in behind sandbags that wouldn't stop a termagant. Men whispered final prayers and prepared to die well. Priority override from Spaceport Command. Evacuation 85% complete. Estimate 40 minutes to launch completion. Hold at all costs. 40 minutes against 3 bio-titans and 60,000 organisms. Kelam's response was predictably insane. All units prepare for Glory Run. We're going to ram the lead bio-titan. If we can bring it down, might block the approach. Suicide, but what wasn't at this point? We'd accepted this when we took the mission. Now just making our deaths count. I watched through my viewport as we accelerated toward the nearest bio-titan. Westner laid continuous fire into its weapon clusters, draining our last power cells. The multi-lasers focusing array finally cracked like breaking glass, but not before destroying 2 primary weapon symbiotes. The bio-titan's response was devastating. Living ammunition struck Kelam's Lehman Russ, bioacid eating through armor in seconds. The tank slewed to a stop, smoke pouring from holes straight through to the crew compartment. The other Chimera took a direct hit that reduced it to dissolved metal. We survived by pure chance. We were alone now, one damaged Chimera against a tide that darkened the landscape. I made the only decision that made sense. Ram it, hit that thing with everything we have. Reeves understood. He pushed the accelerator through the floor, engines screaming as governors overrode. If we could hit the damaged bio-titan where the Hellhound had wounded it, maybe bring it down, create an obstacle. Through my viewport, the bio-titan grew larger. Alien majesty terrible in its perfection. This was directed evolution, every curve of chitin designed for one purpose, consumption of all life. The impact never came. Lance strikes from orbit turned the world white, the Navy finally in position. The bio-titan vanished in a pillar of energy connecting sky to Earth. The blast wave hit like the Emperor's fist. The Raging Boar went airborne, tumbling end over end. I felt my harness dig in as gravity became meaningless. Through spinning vision blocks, ground, sky, explosions, ground again. We hit hard. The impact drove all thought away. My neck snapped with a sound like breaking wood, and suddenly I couldn't feel anything below my shoulders. Through dimming vision, I could see my crew struggling with bent harness releases. Cooper hung upside down, blood running into his eyes. The smell of promethium was strong. A fuel line had ruptured. Haynes was shouting something about getting out before she cooked. Good man. He'd get them clear. My vision was going dark at the edges, but I could still think clearly enough for one last assessment. 6 would survive from the Raging Boar. Cooper would carry the weight of those children's faces. Westner would find another multi-laser to master. Mitchell would keep humming his Hive World hymns while rigging charges. They'd be absorbed into other units, carrying their experience to fresh formations who didn't yet know the arithmetic of survival. The evacuation would be called a marginal victory. 50,000 saved from billions. Acceptable losses by Imperial standards. The details, the screaming, the dying, the choices that traded lives for time, those wouldn't make it into official histories. My last thought was oddly clear. We'd done our duty, held the line, bought time with blood, added our small contribution to humanity's survival. Tomorrow or next week, soldiers like my crew would do it again on another world against the same implacable foe. The Emperor protects, even if his protection looked like watching his servants die by the billions for a cause already lost. But they would keep fighting, keep dying, keep holding the line. In this grim darkness, there was only war, and war always demanded its price in full. Darkness claimed me as the Raging Boar burned, but I'd seen enough shuttles launched to know our deaths had meant something. That was the best any soldier could hope for. My duty was done.